Chief Rabbi, dear colleagues, communal leaders, ladies and gentlemen, friends, it is a very humbling task to introduce the Chief Rabbi. When I was asked to do it, I really felt somewhat uncomfortable and also a little bit confusing task, because how can I introduce the Chief Rabbi? What can I tell you about the Chief Rabbi that you don't know? So I thought that perhaps instead of introducing the Chief Rabbi, I will say a few words about why we need this visit of Chief Rabbi, what we expect from this visit of Chief Rabbi, and how we can get the greatest benefit out of this visit. I didn't want to speak about Parshat Shavua. I wanted for once being free of it, but it imposed itself on me. Today I was reading the opening of the sanctuary in the wilderness. And after it was opened, and after all the rituals were performed, there is something strange there, some sort of a mystery. It says that once all the rituals were performed, Aaron and Moses went into the sanctuary, and they came back and they blessed the people. Now, as you know, sanctuary was a very strict place. You didn't do anything unless it was part of the protocol, and it is not. So where this story of them coming inside and then coming out blessing the people, where it came from? So it says there, scary thing, that once it was built, 6 months of work, hard work to create this wonderful building. It is built. 8 days of inauguration of the priests. Everything has been done. All the rituals performed. And people came in and they didn't feel that the divine presence is resting there. Very simple. The whole thing is not working. It is not just you have a building where you are coming and you perform some rituals. It has to be a place of divine presence. And people said, Moses, what's going on? Nothing happening. So the opening of the building, instead of bringing happiness, brought extra anxiety. Okay, yes, we opened it, but nothing happens. Moses had to come out with Aaron and giving people a special blessing of their work, that now, and then everyone felt, oh, something changed. It is house of God. My friends, we are facing exactly the same situation. It is just scary, spooky, how relevant it is to what happened to us. We worked so hard to reopen our schools, and we feel that something which gone with the lockout just didn't come back. We reopened the place, we did all the work, we put all the notes, arranged the masks, the air purifiers, everything, but something is still missing. This atmosphere, what people used to come to shul to feel the shul's atmosphere, is still not there. We need a blessing. We need a bracha, as Moses and Aaron in their time gave us bracha, and then the divine presence came. That's what we need. We need bracha. Talmud says, Tekef letalmid chacham bracha. Talmud says there are a few things in life that they happen immediately after the appearance of the first, immediately the second appears. With the appearance of Talmid Chacham in your midst, it is automatic. Next step comes the blessing. That's what the Gemara says. It's a puzzling thing. What it is to do with Talmid Chacham comes to somewhere and suddenly there is a blessing. He's not doing anything. He's just there. That brings a blessing. Rav Kook, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, wrote a commentary on Tractate Brachot, which I really don't know how people learned this tractate before he wrote it, because he explains some very fundamental things there which without him you wouldn't know. He says, in order to receive bracha can come, but bracha doesn't enter unless you have a vessel. Like you can pour water, but if you don't have the catchment, then the whole water goes away. The bracha can come. If you are not a receptacle for the bracha, will be no bracha. You will lose it. Says Rav Kook, presence of Talmid Chacham makes a shift. You may not notice this shift, but it is a shift. You may even not acknowledge this shift, but it is still a shift. And a person becomes fitting, deserving vessel for blessing. My friends, everywhere, every community that the chief rabbi came there, he brought with him bracha. When he was in Ireland, he brought bracha to the Jewish community in Ireland. When he was in the Western Marble Arch, he brought bracha to Marble Arch. And most famously, when he came to Kinloss, he made it into the exemplary community of the whole entire United Kingdom. The spreading of the Torah and the communal life which is happening there, there is nothing like this, I think, in any of the United synagogues in this country. And I'll tell you a secret. I once asked him, how did you do it? Can I say what was Chief Rabbi's answer? Yeah, okay. He said, very simple. You know, they, as usual, had a big machlekes there. I made a little bit of sholem, and then everything was okay, all right. This is what I mean by when I say a person, his presence brings bracha. So this bracha that Chief Rabbi later on brought into the Chief Rabbinate, with all the projects, with the communal excellence project, with the Shabbat UK project, he brought bracha. And this is what we have to make ourselves. We make to have ourselves into vessels which will be able to receive, to contain the bracha which is Chief Rabbi's presence brings to us. And then the bracha will come back to our shuls, and it will be again the place where God's presence is resting. Chief Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. I'm going to speak from here, if that's all right, just to feel a better connection with you all. And to our distinguished rabbis, please forgive me and excuse my back. Dain Cooperman, Rabbanim Nichbadim, community leaders, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Dain Cooperman, for your really lovely and warm words of welcome from the heart. Certainly entered into my heart. This community is blessed with the leadership of Dain Cooperman, together with the other rabbis here, through exceptionally difficult times. You have steered this community masterfully, giving incredible direction. And I have received so much inspiration from what the rabbis of Leeds have been doing during the past 2 years. But not alone. Together with your community leaders, the Reb Council, the heads of your shuls, and everyone who has been responsible for the welfare activities and everything else happening within our Jewish community. And it's so wonderful of you all to come out this evening. I will never again take for granted the privilege of being able to interact personally, face to face with people. It's a gift from Hashem. And together with me being able to address you personally here this evening, I'm touched and moved to have been told that a few hundred people are watching this event live on Zoom as well. Right now, we are very much thinking about the plight of the people in the Ukraine and how fitting it was that a prayer should have been recited at the beginning of tonight's event. And we pray that the millions of people who right now are fearing and dreading what the next moment might bring will be able to live at ease and in peace. And may that happen swiftly for them. May there be an end to this conflict, to the bitter war, and to the tragic loss of life. I'd like to speak to you about our post-pandemic era. There was a time when I was calling it the post-COVID era that's going to come. Alas, there's never going to be a post-COVID era. We're going to have to learn how to live with COVID well into the future. And please God, we'll do so in a healthy and constructive and wonderful way. But we certainly hope that soon we'll be able to celebrate being in the post-pandemic era. And this period of time that we have endured, together with so many tragedies, has also taught us a lot. And having gone through those experiences, we cannot allow the rest of our lives to be the same ever again. Our aim must not be to bring things back to where they were before. That will be a failure on our part. We have to learn from our COVID experiences in order to emerge from the pandemic being strengthened, in order to have a brighter future compared to that which we were experiencing previously. So when I was Chief Rabbi of Ireland and raising my family there was an advertisement on television for KitKat. You might be wondering, what has this got to do with anything? But actually, that advertisement for KitKat will provide for us the key to a bright post-pandemic future. So this is how the advert went. There was a large family sitting around a table. Every member of the family had a KitKat in front of them. And they were engaged in an argument. Some were saying, it's a biscuit. And the others were saying, it's a bar. And the ones who were saying it's a biscuit pointed to the biscuit part. And the others saying it's a bar pointed to the chocolate part. And then, having shown this argument, the punchline at the end was, whether you love a biscuit or whether you love a bar, KitKat is for you. A very effective advert. People are still talking about it to this day. But what's that got to do with anything? Actually, there are halachic implications of whether you consider KitKat to be a biscuit or a bar because of the bracha that you need to recite. If for you KitKat is a biscuit, the bracha is Borei Minei Mezonot. And if for you KitKat is a bar, the bracha is Shakol Nieh Bidvaro. And when it comes to such brachot, it's a subjective matter. Because what you consider it to be will determine what bracha you make. And here I'd like to introduce to you two very important terms in our tradition. They are Iccar and Tafel. Iccar is the main component, the essence of the item. Tafel is that which is of secondary importance. So if I'm going to say the she'akol, it's the chocolate which is the Iccar, and it's the biscuit which is the Tafel. And so too it will be at our Seder table. We will take maror and we'll dip it in charoset. the bracha that we will recite will not be al achilat charoset, it will be al achilat maror, because maror will be the Iccar and charoset will be the Tafel. On Sukkot, we take the 4 kinds. The bracha is not al arbaat haminim. The bracha is not al netilat lulav etrogat asvarava. The bracha is al netilat lulav. And the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah explains that is because the palm tree is the highest of all of the 4 of them, and therefore the lulav is the Iccar, so the bracha goes after the Iccar, the main component of it. The others are of secondary importance. What COVID has taught us most of all is to differentiate between Iccar and Tafel. God has presented us with an extraordinary opportunity for 2 years of cheshbon hanefesh, introspection. So many people I know have taken a turn during COVID, have decided on a change in the course of their life, have resigned from their positions, have started to study something new, have decided to move house, have all kinds of experiences people have been relating to me, because our experience has taught us about Iccar and Tafel. Sometimes, however, it's very difficult for us to identify the difference between the two. Indeed, sometimes the Iccar might be right in front of us under our nose, but all we see is the Tafel. Let me give you an example. A home where store was suffering from employee theft. This major store was losing thousands of pounds, and the owners knew that there were people working there and they were stealing some of the goods. So they decided that from a certain day onwards, after the shop was closed, when the workers were leaving, they put security personnel at every exit. And the workers had to empty their pockets, open their bags, so that they could be inspected. On the first day of this procedure, one of the workers came along. He had a wheelbarrow full of boxes. So the security fellows opened the boxes. Every box was empty. Took them 5-6 minutes going through all the boxes, and then they cleared him through. The next day again, he came with a wheelbarrow full of boxes. Again, they had to open the boxes. All the boxes were empty, and they cleared him through. After 2 weeks, day after day, the guy with a wheelbarrow full of the boxes, and they never found anything. After those 2 weeks, one of the owners came up to him and said, "I know you're up to something. Tell me what it is, I'll let you off, and please stop bringing all those boxes." So the fellow said, "You promise I won't get into trouble?" The owner said, "Yes, I promise." "Okay," said the worker, "I'll tell you what I'm doing. You see, what I'm doing is I'm stealing wheelbarrows." So right in front of the security personnel, there was the Iccar that was there, the wheelbarrows. All that they noticed was the Tafel, the empty boxes. And isn't that something which sometimes happens to us? But COVID has taught us how to differentiate between the two. And never again should we make the mistake. So let me give you a few examples. Our health, our well-being. COVID has taught us how important health is. And not just physical health, mental health as well. You know, if you go through an experience in which you don't know if you're actually going to emerge from it alive, that should change your life. Because afterwards, when you do survive, you'll appreciate every precious moment. Isn't that what all of us have just gone through? When that pandemic started in March 2020, every single one of us, we didn't know how it was going to develop, who would be affected, mi yichyeh u mi yamut, who would live and who would die. We've been living nervously. And thank God for the vaccinations. And it's a mitzvah for us to take all those vaccinations. And all of our society have a responsibility to do so. And if not for the vaccinations, who knows where we might be? So we've gone through this near-death experience. Let's therefore cherish every single moment of our lives and make the most of the precious minutes that God gives us through our one and only experience of physical life on earth. Another example, relationships. Tragically, as a community rabbi, as a chief rabbi, I come across so many instances of feuds, disputes within families, within communities, within the workplace. And you know, what I've learned is the vast majority of these machloikeses, these broigeses, these verribbels, the vast majority of them are about narishkeit. They're about empty boxes. In some instances, people don't even remember what it was that split the family. Somebody said something to somebody else, it upset them, whatever. But what we do know is those are the people we don't speak to. And God forbid we should share our money with them. Money is the main cause of feuds. That's something I have found. And what is money? It's nothing. Human life, our health, our spirituality, our goodness, our kindness. That's the Iccar. Materialism, that's the Tafel. And indeed, so many academic studies have been carried out during the pandemic, and every single one of them, particularly led by a high-level academic study in Harvard University, have shown that during COVID, levels of spirituality have risen globally. More people believe in God. The souls of people are yearning for expression. There was a remarkable article, which is in the Daily Mail in August of 2020. It was the first such study, which showed that in the UK, within the age group of 18 to 24, that's the most challenging of all age groups when it comes to faith. Within that age group, during the previous month, 52% of that age group in the UK had prayed at least once. And there was a photograph of a young lady in front of a computer screen, and she had her hands in the way that Christians pray, in front of the computer screen praying. That's a remarkable phenomenon that we've just gone through. Similar to wartime, where your neshama wants to find its expression. That doesn't necessarily mean that people have been turning to established faiths and religions for the expression of their spirituality. And that means we need to reach out to such people. We need to engage with them because they want to find religious expression in their lives, because they have discovered the truth. The Iccar is spirituality. The Tafel is materialism. And it's not worth arguing over material matters. We've only got one life, so let's therefore utilize it for peaceful coexistence, for harmony within our families, bringing people together, living, coexisting in the way that God wants us to as responsible human beings, in a menschedick way. Because if you're a mensch, you're a good Jew. If you're not a mensch, I'm sorry, however frum you might think you are, you're not a good Jew. And we need to behave in a menschedick way to absolutely everybody. And let's never forget that that spark of spirituality within everybody wants to find its expression. And let's use those sparks within ourselves in a constructive way. If during the pandemic you have kind of felt, is God trying to tell me something? The answer is yes. I'm not exactly sure what, but he has been trying to tell each and every one of us something. And one of the things, without any doubt whatsoever, is he's been trying to tell us, you've got only one life. Use it well. You're Jewish. Be a good Jew. Support your community. Connect with God. Be a mensch. Let's utilize those gifts that Hashem has given us. Another lesson of the pandemic. Life cycle events. So many of us, myself included, in our family, we had a very special occasion. An occasion for which there should have been hundreds of people. It came at, we've gone through phases, so it came at, during one of those phases, you could have a maximum of 30. So we had 30. I know for some of you, your simchas were cancelled. Some of you would have had levayas of precious members of family where hardly anybody could be present. We've gone through really, really tough times. But it's amazing how many people have said to me, Chief Rabbi, that simcha of ours, it was difficult, it was an ordeal, but we discovered something very precious. Small is beautiful. Intimate can be wonderful. And the horse-driven carriage that was going to bring my daughter to the chuppah, we didn't have it. Doesn't really matter. The Iccar is the chuppah. The Iccar is the aliyah that the bar mitzvah boy has. The Iccar is the Dvar Torah that the bat mitzvah girl gives. The party is nice, but it's only the tafel. And people have recognized that. So let's not forget that. Of course, let's party, let's have great simchas. But let's never forget what the real Iccar is. There was this extraordinary phenomenon during the months of October, November, December of last year, constantly on the radio, in the newspapers. Would Christmas be cancelled? That was the terminology that was being used. And certain ministers would say, it might be possible, Christmas might have to be cancelled. Others say, what do they mean by Christmas being cancelled? That's a result of a society taking a festival and creating it in a totally commercially driven context, whereby the tafel, the turkey, has become the Iccar. And the religious nature of the day, for some, has not even become the tafel. It doesn't exist at all. And I've shared my thoughts with the Cardinal, with the Archbishop of Canterbury, with others. They agree with me. They lament the fact that this is what has happened to their main religious day. Let's never allow it to happen to our Yontovs, to our Shabbos. Let us never forget what the real Iccar is and the blessing that we have, the extraordinary gift of Shabbat. You know, we're having Shabbat UK over the weekend of the 15th of May. It's going to be an amazing celebration throughout the country to celebrate Shabbos. And I'll never forget our first Shabbat UK in 2014. I was speaking about digital detox. That's what Shabbos is for us. One day in a week, we cut off our connection with the digital world. It refreshes our soul. And it connects us with family and a day which brings us together as a community in a very beautiful way. Something remarkable happened. When I spoke about digital detox, unexpectedly, it gained national attention. And I was being interviewed on television and radio about the Jewish Sabbath and digital detox. And then amazingly, on the Shabbat before Shabbat UK, there was an editorial in the Times. And the editorial in the Times called upon every British citizen to nominate one day in a week, which would be their digital detox day. A day in which they wouldn't use mobile phones. A day on which they wouldn't use the computer. They quoted some of the things I had said about Shabbat UK, and then the editorial used these words. We must all have a digital detox day because the Jewish Torah has got it right. Is that amazing? The Jewish Torah has got it right. Not a surprise to us, we always knew that, ever since it was given at Mount Sinai. But we are so fortunate and so privileged that the law given to us by God thousands of years ago is as relevant, if not even more relevant today than it has ever been before. And let us appreciate that gift of Shabbos, the gift of Yom Tov, and how it can indeed enhance and enrich our lives. And what Dein Kuberman was trying to say to you before was, let me put it in plain speak. Please come to shul. That's what he was saying. And I repeat that appeal. Community, that's the next thing that we've learned. Iccar and Tafel. We were introduced to Zoom. I never heard of Zoom before. Don't know if you had. Apparently it did exist. But suddenly the world was using Zoom. Thank God for the gift of Zoom. But with everything that Zoom does for us, there's one thing it can't do. It can't bring a natural sense of togetherness of two human beings, the warmth of a connection. Zoom can never provide for us a sense of community. You can only have that in person. being together with people, davening with them, socializing with them, having a fishbowl at the Kiddush with them, having cultural events with them, coming, for example, at an evening such as this. This sense of community, it makes us feel important, it makes us feel included, it makes us feel recognized. That's what the pandemic has taught us. That is the Iccar, that sense of togetherness. Shabbos is not a Saturday, we might mutter some prayers at home, read the paper, do whatever it is. I won't go into the details, but you can follow it yourselves. Shabbos is a day for community, to come to shul, to support your faith, to connect with our roots, to guarantee the continuity of Am Yisrael. That's the Iccar. So I therefore give an echo to the Dayan's words. Please come along on Shabbos and Yom Tovs. It's amazing, it's brilliant, it's uplifting. It's the best possible thing for us. There's something else that we learnt from COVID. It's the definition of community. We had always thought that community is defined by buildings. Community, Jewish religion has been building-centered. But COVID taught us no. A community is defined by people. Communities are about people and not buildings. To use Hebrew, community is about minyan and not binyan. The building exists to facilitate the people coming into it. COVID taught us that without a building to come to, you can find your Jewish expression through chesed, through acts of kindness, through being in touch with people. The power of people, sometimes davening elsewhere, away from the shul building, sometimes davening by ourselves. But our Judaism was alive and it thrived and we shone through the excellence of practicing our faith and reaching out to people and enabling them to know, every single person, that they're not alone during the most trying of times. And that too is something that we have to carry now through with us well into the future. The future of our communities does not rest in which buildings we're going to have. The community of the future depends on what is the best choice to make for the people within the community, their Yiddishkeit, and what is the best thing we need to do for the next generation and those that will follow. I'm not telling you exactly what to do. I'm stating the obvious principle. And I know that this is exceptionally relevant here in Leeds right now. And I don't envy you that you need to make tough decisions for the future. And I'm absolutely with you in that. But let's all recognize the underlying principle according to which we must follow. People are the ones who count for the sake of our future. They are the Iccar and not the buildings. Something else that COVID taught us. The Iccar is home. Did we ever think there would be a time in our lives when it would be the law of the land? You had to stay at home. And it was your luck who you were sharing that time with under the same roof. And thank God for those of us who have happy marriages, who have wonderful families. It was an extraordinary time. But we also recognize that there were some people who were punished because they needed to endure exceptionally difficult times during COVID, being locked in a very small space with some challenging people. And levels of mental illness have risen. And that's something we should never forget, to always reach out to people to understand that mental illness is just like every other illness. We shouldn't attach any stigmas to it. And we need to respect people and understand their predicament and their situation. And we also need to concentrate on building stable, wonderful family lives of the future, because ultimately the home is the Iccar. And then there's something else that COVID taught us. It's all about giving. Before COVID, there were so many people whose lives depended on what they were going to receive from others, how our society would deliver something in their interest. But COVID taught us about the fact that we live in this world to give of ourselves to others. We're already starting to forget. We shouldn't forget. I'll give you an example of one of the things we're starting to forget. Do you remember those 10 weeks in a row on Thursday evenings at 8 o'clock when we stood outside our homes and we clapped? People have already started to forget. I remember one of those Thursday evenings was Seder night. And the big question was, well, do you disrupt your Seder to go outside? And the answer was yes, and I and my family did it. Because we went to clap for those heroes of our society. Because the ultimate heroes are not the people whose faces are on the covers of magazines. The ultimate heroes are those who keep our society going, who stack the shelves of supermarkets, who look after the clinics and the hospitals, people who gave extraordinary service to the nation and who continue to do so. We discovered all the more that the Iccar of life is the capacity to give. Because the Torah teaches us that we're here on earth to give. You know, in Parshat Ki Tisa, the system is presented of the census. How did we count people? Because we never engage in a head count. Because we don't want to reduce people to become mere numbers. So the Torah famously teaches that each individual gave a half shekel piece and the coins were counted, and that way we knew the total census figure of the nation. So what that really meant was that if you gave, you were counted. Those who give count. If you don't give, you don't count. The Torah is trying to tell us that in the same way as philosophers say, in the name of Descartes, I think, therefore I am, our tradition teaches, I give, therefore I am. My giving power and capacity defines what kind of a human being I am. And this is something which we're discovering right now with regard to the plight of millions of people in Ukraine. We recently read in Parshat Zachor the passage from the Parsha of Ki Teitzei, to remember Amalek. And it starts with the words, Zachor et asher asa lech Amalek, baderech b'tzeitchem miMitzrayim. Remember what the Amalekites did to you while you were on the way leaving Egypt. Baderech. And many of our commentators ask, why do we need the word baderech? Obviously we were baderech. We were on the way. Where else are we supposed to be? We had left Egypt. We were on our way to Canaan. We were baderech. Let the Torah just say, b'tzeitchem miMitzrayim, when you left Egypt. The Al-Sheikh HaKadosh gives this beautiful answer. He says the word baderech is used in order to teach us that time and time again the Jewish people would be baderech. It wasn't only then fleeing Egypt. Time and again we'd be on the run, fleeing from one country where it would be dangerous for us in search of a safe haven in another country. And then says the Al-Sheikh, this term baderech is used to teach us that if ever we come across any other people suffering in the same way, we must be the first to reach out to them in order to assist them. That's what's happening today. I heard on the news yesterday, the United Nations is telling us 10 million people have left their homes in the Ukraine. 10 million people, baderech. And the response of Jewish individuals, Jewish families, Jewish communities in the UK has made me feel so proud that this is our reaction to the people who right now are baderech, who are on the way. I'm hoping to go to Poland, to the border with Ukraine during the next week, to see how our communities are helping through the contributions they've given the refugees coming over the border, not just Jewish refugees, general refugees. And I know I'm going to be swept away with pride seeing how we are saving lives of desperate people there. Desperate in the same way as we, sadly, over previous generations had been. COVID has taught us to cherish life, but not just our own lives, to respect and cherish the lives of everyone else. There's one major lesson of COVID the world hasn't learned properly. You see, the pandemic doesn't differentiate between genders, between races, between faiths. everybody's part of the other side. All of humankind are the enemy. COVID does not recognize borders. Isn't that a remarkable lesson that Hashem has been teaching us through the pandemic? Isn't it time that all of humankind must recognize we're all part of the same family? We're all on the same side. There should be an end to strife, an end to bitterness, an end to machlokas, an end to war. But what has emerged from this pandemic? One of the most horrific wars which is taking place before our eyes. And global leaders are sitting on their hands and are seeing this utter destruction of human life and are not doing anything about it. It's an enormous tragedy. The world has not grasped what the Iccar is. We're going for the Tafel. But Baruch Hashem, Jewish people are being so amazing, together with so many others, and I'm proud of our communities because we know what the Iccar is. The Iccar is to give and not to receive, to be there for the sake of others. So, thank you for enabling me to share some of the thoughts in my mind. I'm pretty sure that for you, you can work out many other Iccars as opposed to Tafels within your own lives, things that you have learned. Let's not forget those lessons. Let's guarantee that the lessons of COVID will continue forever within our lives. Let's guarantee that our children and our grandchildren, those who will come into the world at a later time, will hear of our experiences because God has sent us so many crucially important messages. And further to our pandemic experiences, let's ensure that we don't only see empty boxes, that we'll always notice the wheelbarrows in our lives. God bless you all.
Introduce it now.
Okay, so we'll have a few questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Rabbi, thank you very much for those inspiring words. We now have a question and answer session. So we have two people with microphones here. If anybody has a question, if you can put up your hand so we can direct where the microphones will go, we can start to ask questions of the Chief Rabbi.
It's a bit surprising that in this irreligious world where the majority of people tend to claim that they have no religion, that they all care very much about the planet, young people in particular, and they want everybody to have a better life. And also, we've had COVID, which also united people with a common enemy. Do you see any harbingers of the future in that?
So thank you for your question. I'm pleased that you raised the environment, because when it comes to the essence of giving, it's a mitzvah of the Torah for us to look after our environment. Le'ovda u'le'shomra, the Torah says. God has placed us in this world to work within the fields, to toil within the world, and also l'shomra, to look after our world. We're very good at the Ovda, we're not so great at the Shomra. That's why I went to COP26 in October, in order to convey a message there from our Torah that it's a religious imperative for us to look after our environment, and that's not just people we know, people who might be on the other side of the world for what might happen in those areas, and not just people in our time, everybody in the future. And it is important that our communities should take some painful steps and engage in an element of sacrifice for the sake of our future. And I'm proud of many initiatives. For example, our United Synagogue shuls have undertaken what we call Project Dorot, Dorot for the sake of our future, through which communities and hopefully families as well will take responsible steps. So it's great that people are responding to the environment in this way, and we support them. It's very fascinating that you refer to the majority of people claiming that they are irreligious. And yes, we're living through challenging times because there was a time when this was a religious country, and then a predominantly religious country, and then a nominally religious country. But today, atheism is rife, and the humanist movement is gaining ground. Secularism is the tone of life in many government departments and in the public square. But together with that, COVID has actually correctly taught us that the neshamas of people, the souls of people, are yearning for expression. If we will just relate for a moment to Jewish circles, I remember an encounter we had. It was in the 1990s. Video conferencing was created. And it was possible, wow, to sit in a room in London and to watch on a television screen a speaker in Jerusalem. That hadn't happened before. So I was then the chairman of the Rabbinical Council of the United Synagogue, and a benefactor in London said to me, Rabbi Mirvis, you choose your speaker anywhere in the world, and I'll link you and the rabbis of London up with that speaker. So that's amazing. I know my speaker. I want Chief Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau of Israel. So it happened. And it was my first video conferencing experience. And there was Chief Rabbi Lau, and we were pinching ourselves, gosh, he's in Jerusalem, we're in London. Is it really possible that we could have this encounter? Why am I mentioning this to you? So one of our rabbis said to Chief Rabbi Lau, isn't it a great pity that the majority of citizens of Israel are irreligious, and that you go certain places on Shabbos and you see this happening, and there are more and more restaurants which are treif and this and that. What can be done about it? And Chief Rabbi Lau said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, I haven't come across a single irreligious Jew in Israel. They don't exist. Pesach, people eat matzah. Chanukah, people light the candles. Being decent human beings, I see so many. Isn't that an important mitzvah of the Torah? Isn't it an important mitzvah of the Torah to live in the land of Israel? They're doing that. You in London are not doing that. He said, I don't know a single irreligious Jew in Israel. It's a beautiful way of looking at people. And so too within our society. People might call themselves atheists and secularists and what have you, but every single human being has got a neshama. And during COVID, we've seen that yearning for its expression, and I think we need to respect everybody. We also need to promote religion with pride. And that's why, together with other faith leaders, I'm exceptionally busy and striving to guarantee that religion will find its place within the public square. And that whether people are or are not religious, at least, that religion should be respected in this country always. Okay.
Any others?
Yeah.
What can we do to engage that hard 18 to 24 age group that you were talking about? What can we do to get them to engage with Shabbat services, with synagogue life? Can you give us, our community, any tips?
It's a great question, and it's an enormous dilemma. With regard to the 18-year-olds, the time to start is 18 years before. I was speaking earlier about the Iccar being our homes. With regard to the future of our Yiddishkeit, the Iccar is our homes. It's important for shuls to thrive, for schools to educate, for clubs to engage, for all kinds of initiatives to take place. But really, the home is the most important institution within our communities. And let me share with you a personal reflection on this. So, I grew up in South Africa between the ages of 6 and 11. My father was a rabbi of a town called Benoni. And if anybody here has ever heard of Benoni, I'll be exceptionally surprised. Right? Anybody here heard about Benoni before I mentioned it now? You have? Wow. Okay. Okay. Right. So Benoni is 20 miles outside of Johannesburg. It is well known because in Benoni you have the world's largest gold mine. And that's why there has always been a thriving Jewish community there within that large industrial area. So my father was the rabbi of Benoni. There were over 300 families there. And ours was the only frum family with children in the place. The only frum children I knew were my siblings. And that's how I grew up, right? Couldn't go to the football on Shabbos. This wasn't allowed, that wasn't allowed. When I reflect on growing up, it was a marvelous life. It was amazing because I had the most beautiful home in which I grew to love my Yiddishkeit and to value it and to appreciate it. And today I'm your chief rabbi. And I must tell you, I'm not your chief rabbi because I went to a Jewish high school when we moved to Cape Town, or because I went to yeshiva, or because I joined B'nai Akiva. I'm your chief rabbi because of the home that I came from, in an area in which ours was the only frum family with children, family with frum children. If you've got a strong Jewish family environment, you're well on the way. There's no guarantee. I'm sorry, there's no guarantee about anything in any family today, in any department, right? This is an uncertain, challenging world. But it's quite a good bet that the children growing up within a strong, happy, thriving, proud Jewish environment will grow up to be loyal, proud, practicing Jews. In addition, we must do whatever we can. Education is the key, and shul life, and community life. But coming to that age group, it's an enormous challenge because we have indeed seen, and this is a global phenomenon, children going through 12, 13 years of Jewish schooling, maybe even having a gap year in Israel, going to campus, and we don't see them in shul again. It happens. It's not unusual. So therefore, if people are not coming to us, we need to reach out to them. So before coming here, I was at the Leeds University. And let me tell you, incidentally, why I'm here this evening. Because the question you asked must relate to all of us. What can every one of us do? Our rabbis, our shul leaders, our community leaders, what can we be doing? Parents, relatives. And I asked myself the question as chief rabbi, what must I be doing for that 18 to 24-year age group, which is so critically because that's where they're slipping away from us. By the way, many are coming back to us at that age group, but it's so uncertain. So what I'm doing here is one of my efforts with regard to that age group. And it's a result of COVID. Before COVID, this is how my visits outside of the M25 worked. I choose a community, respond to some special event happening or want to go out there. And when I would be in community X, in that stot, I would visit the old age home, the school, the youth center, and the campus. And during COVID, I realized, no, our campuses need to be prioritized. That very age group you mentioned, they are our Iccar. They're the ones we have to invest in more than anyone else, because if we don't invest properly in them, what's going to happen in our future? So I decided my first venture beyond the M25 post-pandemic would be what we're calling a whistle-stop campus tour. It started Friday night when we had the students from all the London campuses who came to enjoy a Friday evening with me, which thank God was just amazing. And I'm doing numerous campuses yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I came to Leeds to go to the campus. And while coming for the students, I've included in that 2 events. This event this evening, and I met earlier with the rabbis of the city because our rabbis are so important to us, and we all owe an enormous debt of gratitude for their spiritual leadership during the pandemic and well into the future. And I apologize to everybody I'm not seeing and all the organizations I'm not visiting on this particular visit, please God, there'll be many visits in the future. But I need to do what I can for the sake of that age group, to show that we care, we want to inspire, and we want them to have a Jewish future. And there's so much more that needs to be done, and I would love to hear your suggestions, because whatever we're doing, it's not enough, and we need to do more.
Is there anything that we can do? We've spoken about Shabbat, where most schools do get a minyan. But midweek, and I'm surrounded by people from our school, we've worked and worked and worked, and we've managed just about to get a minyan on most days. But because of COVID here, and somebody's gone on holiday there, there has been one or two times when we've actually failed, which is a bit rare for us. But I'm talking about for all the schools, is there any way where we can try and find a way to make sure there's a minyan in this town, in all the three schools, on weekdays, because it underpins the whole of everything that we do.
So thank you for raising that. One of my activities during the COVID period, as soon as it was possible for shuls to be opened again after the major lockdown, and it was during a long period when we could come to shul up to certain numbers with spacing and masks, I announced that I would be visiting every shul in London under my religious authority, and I did it on weekdays. And the message went to the shuls saying, we don't want additional people. I didn't want all the stops to be pulled out and everybody to have to come along. The chief rabbi's coming, let's have this and that. And no, I said, I'm coming just to see the people who are usually there to say thank you to them. And that's what I did. And my message in all of the shuls was, thank you for the inspiration you're giving me, and thank you for the efforts you're making, because the daily minyan, exactly what you said, that's the pillar upon which communities stand. And I applaud, I mean, the fact that you're saying that it's only on rare occasions that some of the shuls don't get a minyan, I think that's an amazing thing, that by and large you are getting minyanim, which means you've got wonderful, wonderful people. I congratulate all those who come regularly and those who come irregularly to say Kaddish, what have you, who keep it going. I think it's a marvelous tribute to this community. But please excuse me, when it comes to the specifics of what Leeds shuls can do, you need to turn to your rabbis and your community leaders, because I don't know the inner mechanics of this community. There are some places where they have one central minyan, some where they alternate between shuls, some where the different shuls maintain their own minyanim, and that actually encourages more people to come, because the more minyanim you got means the more need to be supported, and therefore the overall number who are coming will be a larger number of people who are coming. And it's for you to work that out within your communities, because I don't want to get involved in something which is a local issue. But the principle is clear. Daily minyanim are so important to us, and congratulations for asking the question, because you care, and well done to everybody else who cares.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Rabbi. I've been told that that's all we have time for.
That's okay.
I want to thank you for your very powerful words. Lots for us to think about. Not just for the people in the synagogue, but for the 192 people watching online, which I hope you'll all agree is a phenomenal number. But we look forward to welcoming you back in Leeds again in the future, and we thank you for fitting us into your busy student schedule and your whistle-stop tour today. A few thank yous. Can I thank BHH Michael for hosting this cross-communal event, and the ladies of BHH who have assisted with the refreshments that we're all going to enjoy. Can I thank Alan and the Millen team for the technology? And it's always really important, can we all thank CST and the volunteers of CST who are standing in the cold to keep us safe at communal events such as this. And can I thank you, the community, for coming back to an in-person event, because I know that this is, I think, only the second big in-person cross-communal event we've had since the event for International Women's Day. I know for some people it's the first time they've come out, and what a draw it was and what a reason to come out this evening. So thank you all for coming, thank you for your support, and I'm sure we all look forward to many more cross-communal community unity events in the future. Thank you all. Can I ask for ladies and gentlemen to remain in your seats while the Chief Rabbi, the Rabbanim and the communal leaders leave. Thank you, good night, be safe, be well. God bless everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much to you and your communities. Thanks for organising it. Really appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.